Hey, friend, do you ever feel like you're stuck in survival mode? Like life's happening to you instead of through you? What if the thoughts running your day aren't the truth about who you are? Today, we're talking about how to shift your mind and step into the joy God meant for you. Hi, friends. Welcome to Taking Back Happy. I'm your host, Gina Granville, God's girl, retired homeschool mom of four, empty nester, Gigi, essential oil and exercise enthusiast, Christian life coach, and someone who is taking back her own happy. I know many of you feel exactly like I do in these midlife years, wondering if your best days are behind you, but feeling way too young and vibrant to sit on the porch and just watch life go by. What if you could replace negative thoughts with curiosity and possibility, renewing your mind, faith, joy, passion, purpose, and adventure in this season? If you're ready for a little mindset coaching as you navigate change, then throw on those walking shoes, pop in those earbuds, and join me right here as we take back happy together. Hi, my Taking Back Happy friends. Have you guys had a chance to check out the Taking Back Happy Facebook group? I've made a few changes in there. It's a little bit more lively, a little bit more interaction. So if you get a chance, hop on over there and check it out. Also, I have a new thing where you can become a TBH Insider, Taking Back Happy Insider. So when you become a TBH Insider, you're going to get weekly emails with the latest podcast, tips on creating a happy mindset, early bird access to any special offers that I may have in the future, and encouraging Bible devos each week. Years ago, I watched this movie with my kids. It was called Second Hand Lions. I don't know if you guys have seen it before or not, but it is so sweet. Such a great movie if you get a chance to see it. So it's about this boy, and he's got a deadbeat mom, and she gets a new boyfriend or whatever, and she just drops him off with these, like, they're uncles of his, but like he's never even met them before. They're like on down the line kind of family members. And she just drops him off at their house. And so he's like, I don't know, he's probably like 13 years old or something, and just figuring out life. And at first he meets they're basically like crazy uncles. So they're sitting on the front porch. They got shotguns, they're just kind of grouchy and ridiculous. But it's just such a sweet story of how, he gets to know them. He learns from them. I mean, they have like these just spectacular lives. And the whole time they're telling you things that happened in their lives when they were younger, you don't know if it's like make believe. You don't know if it really did happen. You don't know if because it's just these huge, big adventures. So it's just like all this mystery and intrigue. And it's kind of cool too, because the old men fall in love with the boy too. So at first they're like, why do we got to have this kid here? And then eventually, they think it's important to pass on like kind of like how to be a man to him. But what's really cool is at the very end of the movie, I won't give it away because it's a really great movie. You might want to watch it. But at the very end, afterwards, they're talking about the uncles. This is years down the road. And the boy had grown up, and they had passed away. And one of the things they say about the two old uncles is they really lived. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today is, are we really living, or are we just caught up in just the day to day, kind of like in survival mode? Have you ever caught yourself reacting to something and then thought, why do you keep doing that? Or maybe you've said, well, that's just how I am. But the truth is that like 95% of what we do every day really comes from our subconscious. No, we're not even like aware of it. It's like a subconscious programming. So it's like old patterns that our brain just kind of runs automatically to keep us safe. But here's the good news. God can help us rewrite that story. That story that our minds are telling us over and over again, he can help us rewrite it. Today, we're going to be talking about how to become aware of your thoughts, how to rewire like what's running in the background, and how to think in a way that actually serves your future not just your fears or keeps you stuck in that survival mode. So let's look at point number one. We want to notice what's running the show. Because, like I said, most of the day is really just lived on an autopilot, like our habits, our reactions, our emotions, even like some of our sense of identity comes from like subconscious thought patterns. And this really isn't just like, it's not our fault. Like our brain is designed to protect us. It's not there to, help you grow and become another better version of yourself. It's there to protect you. And if we look at Romans 12:2, it says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. So we want to be constantly in that growth, in that transformation as we're becoming more and more like Christ and more who he designed us to be. It's so easy to like repeat a thought over and over again, whether it's true or not true. It really becomes like part of who we are. The more that we repeat it, the more that we believe it and we take it on as truth, whether it is truth or not. I remember when I was in my 20s and I always had this story, I'm too fat. I'm too fat. I weigh too much. I don't look good. And it was just, it came from like comparison of like comparing myself to my friends and different things like that. But when I look back now at like how I looked in my 20s, I was like, man, that girl looked good. Now, I didn't exercise, as much as I do now. So I didn't have as many muscles and things like that. But it's just amazing how you view yourself in a certain way. And then you look back and the reality of it is not at all. Like I wasn't fat at all. One practical step that we could do like right now is we can just kind of begin noticing thoughts that are like kind of repetitive thoughts that you think maybe more than once a day, but definitely more than once a week, thoughts that just keep coming up for you. Write it in a journal or write it on a piece of paper just for a few days and see what those thoughts are that just keep coming up and coming up again. What is your inner dialogue? What is your brain telling you? And see if you can notice kind of like what's running behind the scenes, because awareness is definitely the first step toward freedom. Which brings us to the second step. We want to actually challenge the programming. So once we become aware, you can start to kind of question, okay, what's true and what's just some old conditioning? For example, if you say things like, oh, I always mess things up, or it's too late to start over, we know that those are not truths. We know that those are just rehearsed thoughts. One hint might be the word always or to something, those could be hints for you to kind of keep an eye out. But one of my friends, and she was on this podcast, Susan Schul, she has this thing that she says, my favorite age is now. And that just is so encouraging to me. And it's so much better than it's too late to start over, right? I'm like, that's a very depressing thought, especially like, you're in your 40s, 50s, 60s, like you have plenty of life in front of you. My friend Marie and I, we were working through my Taking Back Happy workshop, and we were looking at different things and examining like who God says we are and just all the different things that he says about us, like we're chosen, we're never alone, we're the daughter of the king, we're the light of the world, all those kind of things. And like, do we really believe that or do we not? And, how we speak about ourselves, how we think really is who we are. So we were talking about all these things and how, with God's help, we can rewrite our story and all this stuff. And as we're talking about it, we're saying some things and all of a sudden we're like, oops. It was kind of like it happened so naturally that you fall into that old thought or you fall into that old thing. And Marie said something and then she said, oh, actually I meant, and it's kind of like she caught herself. And I did it several times too. I was like, oh, and this and this. And then I was like, oh, wait a minute. Let me see if I can reframe that and put it in a better version. And so sometimes instead of just saying, something's opposite of what it is, because you're really not going to believe that, right? If you say, like I always say, I'm not very good at techie stuff, but instead of saying you're not very good at techie stuff, you could say things like, well, I'm a lifelong learner. I can learn new things. Or I am a woman who's learning new things, something like that, that just puts you in a whole different mindset. And you don't have to feel kind of like beat up by these old stories. 2 Corinthians 10:5 says, we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. So if we're going to really see ourselves through God's eyes, we're going to have to be like catching those. A lot of times they're negative thoughts. Sometimes they're not necessarily bad thoughts, but they're just thoughts that don't really align with who God says we are. So we have to catch those, and we got to take those captive. A practical step might be when you catch yourself in an unhelpful thought, then go ahead and pause and ask yourself, is this true? Does it align with who God says I am? And what would a faith-filled thought sound like instead? Right off the top of my head, I can think of, I can do all things through Christ. So that brings us to our third step. We are going to practice new thoughts on purpose. Your brain really resists new thoughts because it wants to conserve energy. So it wants to go back to those same old things that it's been saying for years and years and doing for years and years, because it wants to not work really hard and come up with something new, right? But repetition creates new pathways. I know sometimes when I walk through the neighborhood, I do a certain route, and I'll, go down this road and then turn to the right and go around this thing, and I do this certain path. And I had heard people say, if you break up your pattern, like if you drive to work a different direction, or if you take your walk and go a different way, you're going to create a new like pathway in your brain. And so I started doing that sometimes. I would go on my regular route, and then instead of turning right, I would turn left. And sometimes I would go straight down and all the way around. Sometimes I would just weave in and out, except do it from the other side. And it really did feel different. Like right off the bat, I could feel a difference in just doing something as simple as that. So if you can create new pathways in something as simple as taking a walk, think about what you can do with your thoughts and the words that you rehearse and the things that you say day after day after day. That repetition can really create new pathways. The more often you rehearse the truth, the more often that you rehearse like who God says you are, the more natural it's going to become. So God gives us like a renewed mind through daily surrender and through practice. Just like you practice anything else to get good at it, you're not going to play the piano one time and be a really good piano player, right? You're going to have to practice over and over again. And that is the same thing with us and what we're thinking and what we're saying and how we're moving in this world. Practical step could be like speaking affirmations rooted in truth. Sometimes affirmation sounds kind of like hokey or whatever, but it's really just saying things like who God says we are. Like we could just say things like, God is renewing my mind every day, or I can grow and change, or, I trust God. I trust him in the process. I trust him in the growth. It's not about like getting it perfect. It's about practicing and just practicing over and over again, doing it faithfully. I think about at work, it's a medical practice. I think it's so interesting that they use that word, but isn't that just how all science is? It's always a practice. You're trying something new. Good science is constantly being tested, and you come up with a hypothesis, and then you run through and practice and test it and see if it, pans out in the long run. And if it doesn't, you come out with another hypothesis. And that's why science is just ever evolving, because it's like a medical practice. If we did everything like we did back in the 1950s, think about it. Wow, just as long as I've been doing like nuclear medicine, I worked back in the 90s and then I stayed home and raised kids for 20 years and I came back in and wow, just the changes in that, in that amount of time and definitely changes for the better. So, my taking back happy friends, remember your thoughts shape your life, but you don't have to stay stuck in those old ones. Every time you choose like a new faith-filled thought, you're actually rewiring your brain and you're partnering with God to renew your mind. This week, kind of pay attention to what you're thinking about. And when you see those old patterns pop up and those old thoughts pop up, remind yourself, I get to choose my thoughts. You know how I love to say, I get to decide. We get to decide. God has given us a sound mind and a new beginning, and so we need to walk in that. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. This episode encouraged you. I would love for you to share it with a friend. I'm trying to expand and reach new people that I haven't met before. And also hop into that Facebook group, become a TBH insider. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll see you next week. And until then, keep choosing that happy. Keep taking back your happy. We do not have to live in survival mode any longer. If this podcast blessed and encouraged you today, I'd love for you to share it with your friends. You can take a screenshot and share it in your stories, but make sure you tag me at Gina Granville so we can connect. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Make sure you join my Taking Back Happy Facebook group. I'll meet you back here soon, and we'll continue taking back happy together.